Hello and happy Thursday, good people. We are so happy that you're joining us here live for our Manifesting Inclusion event, where we'll be talking about how to create communities of belonging and support. And we are joined today by two amazing colleagues who will introduce in a second. As you all are coming in, we want to take a second and go over a couple of house rules. So, down below, if you have a question for us, please put a question mark and then type your question. That's how we'll know that you have a question for us today. We know that there are going to be tons of comments and engagement in the chat. And so we simply ask that if you're talking about someone, that you use a pseudonym or a name that is not their name so that we can be respectful of our colleagues. Last but not least, if you're joining us live, there's a little share button. Please press share. That not only helps to show that you're a part of our professional development opportunity, but also that you're engaging with these lovely colleagues here today. So, if this was a great conversation, don't be afraid to press the thumbs up. If you want to change the skin tone of some clapping hands or some thumbs, just hold down those buttons. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our show. So, welcome so much. Welcome and thank you so much. We're so excited to have you all today. We're talking about how to create communities of belonging and support. So, I am one half of the Manifesting Inclusion co founding team. My name is Lee Miles. I use she and they pronouns, and I'm going to pass it off to my wonderful colleague, Dr. Laura Gonzalez.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here on this gorgeous day in North Carolina. My name is Laura Gonzalez, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm the other half of the Manifesting Inclusion team. And today we are so excited to be joined by two other higher ed colleagues who are going to share their work, their passion, and their experience with us all. So I would love to kick it over to Dr. Drew Johnson for introductions of our guests.
Greetings, everybody. I'm happy to be here. My name is Dr. Drew Johnson. I serve as the program director for our McNair Scholars Program at North Carolina Central University. I've been here going on to my 7th year, so I get to work with a great group of students, great colleagues. I actually was an Eagle undergrad, so it's always great coming back home and working back home. So, yeah. And so I guess I'll kick it over to Mr. Jalen.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jalen Baker. I'm the Director of Student Success and Student Retention here at Shaw University. I've been working here just over a year now. I've been in this role for 3 weeks now, so that's exciting. I am a double Eagle. I have both of my degrees from North Carolina Central University. And so I'm super excited to be on a panel with such amazing people and to join the discussion that we're about to get engaged in today.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. We appreciate your time. So just to sort of get the ball rolling, I wonder if each of you could tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of the work that you're passionate about. So what is it that really, keeps you working with the amazing college student population? How did you get there, or what do you love most about your work? And let's start again with Dr. Johnson.
Man, how did I get here? So I always tell people it pays not to be a jerk. So I'm in undergrad. I had just crossed, and I think Dean, we called him Dean Brown back then. He's Dr. Gary Brown now, but he was Dean Brown. He was over fraternity life when I was an undergrad. And so I remember as we went on like a retreat, and I remember just everybody was kind of, being college students, but I was just kind of like laid back, like, hey, whatever you need, it's fine. You need me to be in a certain time, it's cool. Didn't give him a hard time. And so I just remember we kind of would stay close throughout the years. And I remember I was in grad school and I was volunteering up here at NCCU, working at academic support for student athletes. And it was one of those days where it's like, man, something has got to give. And I just parked my car and I got out and I happened to see him walk by. And I was like, oh, Dean Brown, how you doing? He was like, hey, man, what you up to now? And I was like, I'm just trying to finish up grad school. And I was like, what are you up to? He's like, man, I'm the interim vice chancellor. And I was like, I need a job. He was like, you know what? Call me once you get done. And so as soon as I finished up my master's, I reached out to him. And then there was a position open up and he kind of interviewed for it. And yeah, it kind of took off from there. And then, being in that role, just being back home, being at the HBCU, you really just get to show up as your authentic self. And then you really just get to see others and help others be the best version of themselves. And so that's the part that I really love.
Wonderful. That's such a great example of the importance of community belonging and support and connection. I love that you shared that mentoring story. How about for you, Jalen?
So my interest in higher ed started when I was in high school. So I actually went to the early college high school at North Carolina Central University, and so I was mentored by one of our former vice chancellors, Dr. Kevin Rome. At the time, he was the vice president of student affairs and enrollment management there, and I saw this dude, and I was like, I want to be him one day. And so, me being in high school, running around NCCU's campus, probably I shouldn't have been, but I was running around as if I was a college student trying to get networked and engaged in government, trying to meet all of the student leaders on campus because I looked at them at the time as like celebrities. I was just so excited. I would never forget. I met Kent Williams, who everybody knows affectionately as presidential at ECU. And I was in high school, and he was. I first had met him as when he was SGA president. So I saw him as SGA president. And he had this whole big thing when he was CNN about trying to get professional dress on campus and everything. And it was a real big notion that was going on. So I met him and I was like, oh my God, you're SGA president. Me being in high school, that was a big thing at the time. So I saw that. He became my mentor. And then as I matriculated through NCCU, I was engaged in student life. And when people would ask me what I wanted to be, at that point, I was saying the vice chancellor of student affairs in college. So that's where my matriculation in this field really started. And once I graduated, just a year after I graduated undergrad, I was able to get engaged and get started working at North Carolina Central University. NCCU gave me my foundation as my first role working in this Office of Student Engagement. I then went on to Guilford College and I was able to become Assistant Director of Student Leadership there. I was Director of Student Engagement and Leadership at St. Augustine's University. I did another stint at NCCU and now I'm at Shaw University overseeing a lot of different things. And so what started off as a knucklehead student who just wanted to get around and get engaged, now here I am a practitioner almost 10 years later. So it's exciting.
Love it.
So, we would like to dig a little bit into your identity. So, we know that often we have these identities that form our experience on campuses. Can you all talk a little bit about your identities, how they shaped your student experience, and how do they shape how you work with students now? We'll start with Jalen and go over to Dr. Johnson.
Absolutely. So, as from face value, you can see that my identity I try to follow as a black male. I focus in on making sure that I'm focusing on the development of our black male community, engaging our students in different aspects of being a black male, and definitely trying to help them understand because it is right here. But it is a struggle being a black male for us in our society right now. So coming in with that mindset, I do a lot of work. I developed a program here that you guys have heard of before called the Male Achievement Center. And so that's a foundation that I use as a student practitioner, as a student affairs practitioner to be impactful on our campus. Another is just as an African American in general, I work at a HBCU. I've done a lot of my work at different HBCUs. And so what that looks like is very different to a lot of different people. And I want to be someone who is impactful as a role model and to help people understand that we can navigate and to be successful in this world as an African American male in different ways, not just as a student, not just as a student leader, but whatever path that it is that you want to focus on and want to matriculate through. I want to be able to be an agent of change for that.
Oh, it's back. It's on me. My bad. I thought I was about to say so. So I think that self-awareness piece, right? Knowing who you are and whose you are, that's like a big thing of mine. And then empathy and understanding. And so I'm a good storyteller. I love stories and I love reels. So I was teaching a freshman seminar course, right? And I was like, "Hey, how's your weekend?" And he was like, "It was cool. What'd you do?" I was like, "Man, I cut the grass. Did some chores." And I had a kid like snicker at me. I was like, "Oh, I mean, I know it's not the sexy thing to do. I mean, but got a family." He was like, "Nah, I just don't. You don't look like you cut your own grass." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." But a lot of students wouldn't really understand my background. Like, I moved out of my house when I was 16. Father was on substance abuse, and so being able to have that empathy and understanding where our first generation students come from. I always joke with, if I'm at a public place I'm speaking, I'm like, man, I know what it's like to have sleep for dinner, and so understanding that piece, that empathy piece, and then kind of being able to work with the students and then having that grace because you kind of understand what they're going through. It's hard to really relate to somebody if, they haven't eaten all day, right? And what that looks like, how that can kind of really impact them. And then being able to get into a space where our students are understanding the culture, right? Students want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. And so just kind of being able to tap into those spaces, that's kind of what really has kind of helped me, and really just been able to kind of building those little environments with students, just building relationships, and then being authentic because they can tell when it's real and when it's genuine and stuff. So that's kind of what I kind of just try to hone in on.
And I want to chime in really quickly too to something that Dr. Johnson has said. I think the authenticity piece, and then also understanding the background of who we are, especially as I mentioned before, working at a HBCU, there are different stories for every single one of our students. And in a place like Shaw University, I think is even more crucial for us to understand and take the time to acknowledge the different backgrounds that some of our students may have been recruited from, some of the places that they've come from. We have this expectation as professionals where we think that everybody's prim and proper, how to handle, how to speak well, but we forget that foundational piece where we actually have to teach and educate sometimes. We have to remember where we were at 17, 18, 19 years old, where our friends were who may not have had the same, upbringing that we had. And I didn't come off a crystal staircase either myself. So I understand that it's important for us to be relatable and to also show to our students that we can relate to them and understand truly what things that they're dealing with when we're focusing on the academic side, or when we're thinking about why is it that you're not performing well even as a student leader. Sometimes they're dealing with those things at home. Sometimes we see students who don't even want to go home on break. So I think being able to show that authenticity of like, hey, I struggle too, hey, I have bills to pay too, it's okay, let us know so that we can assist you in being better.
Thank you both. I really appreciate your willingness to share parts of your life stories with us as we talk about the meaning of sort of belonging and support and being who we are authentically in those spaces. I hope it's okay. I wanted to take a second to, I did a little bit of writing on the topic of belonging. And so something that I just wanted to mention is that over time, there have been different ways of thinking about what belonging means. And an older way of thinking about it maybe is this sort of like hospitality model. So like, as somebody who has always attended predominantly white institutions, like there's this sense of, oh, sure, we'll open our doors and be good hosts to people who were not historically at this institution. And we'll tell them that they can come to our space and belong. But that it's really feels a little bit more like you're a guest, right? Like we'll open the door and we'll invite you in to be a guest. But do you have that real sense of belonging in terms of like, this space was made for me? And so I love the fact that all of you have really raised up HBCUs and the fact that those spaces were made to absolutely say to Black and Brown students, you have a right, you belong, your presence is welcome, and you are the reason why we created this institution here. And that sense of belonging that comes from that sense of rightful presence is so much more powerful than this sort of like, I'm a guest in this space, but I can't really like move the furniture around or get comfortable or like cook the food that I like to cook or whatever in this space. So I just really want to lift up the importance of HBCUs in creating that sense of rightful presence and belonging, which again is, we can maybe after the show notes put a little mention about this book in case there are other scholars of belonging who would like to ponder that idea a little bit further. But having introduced that idea of rightful presence, I wonder what are some strategies that you all have seen to sort of help students come to a college campus and really feel that sense of like, yes, I belong in this space. Like I can go up and talk to the vice chancellor, or I can become a student leader. Like I can belong here in a really important way. So let's start with Dr. Johnson this time.
So the primary focus of our program is getting students who want to pursue their master's and PhD, getting them prepared for graduate school. And so I actually kind of got this from Jalen. So Jalen does like photography, right? As far as like, hey, you have grad school, you have graduation pictures. And so the one thing I did when I got here, I would notice like all of our brochures, like I didn't recognize any of these students. So I was like, okay, where are these just stock images? Like, how did I find this? And so I would see Jalen like, hey, are you guys graduating? Are you graduated? I do this. And I would see some of my seniors' pictures. I was like, those look kind of fire. And then I was like, you know what? Send me those. And so they would send them to me. So then I started putting them on our banners, our retractable banners. I started putting them on our hallway. I put like canvas. So when you walk down our hallway, it's kind of like our Hall of Fame. And so now students will see those. Not only do they want to be on like the canvas, but they want to be on the banners. They want to be like, and then they feel that sense of belonging. So it's like, wow, like
Yes.
doing that. Or they'll see an image of somebody, like, oh, wow, what are they doing now? I'm like, oh, they're at Yale. They're like, oh, dang. And they start to feel like that community. They start to feel like, okay, even I can do that. And so that's kind of like the one thing that I really love about the program. And then to give kudos to Jay, because he does a lot of that stuff. So I was like, yeah, we got to figure out some way to incorporate that. So that was a big thing for us.
Mhm.
So to chime in here, I would say for sure, I work with a lot of first year students. And so one thing that I think is super important is making sure that we help them understand their identity when they get here. But to understand that, we have to make sure that we can build a sense of community so we can see who we have here. And so I do a lot of work with our peer orientation mentors as we talk about our first year experience programming here and help them understand that they focus on our orientation network opportunities that we have when we're bringing them in, but it doesn't stop there. Our peer orientation mentors, we have programming throughout the semester that allows them to build relationships so that we can see these students who we're bringing into the institution and understand who they are, what their story is, and what are the different things that we can do to help make them feel at home. And then as we continue that work, we think about programming that's focused on bringing those students to light, allowing them students to get engaged, and then finding those students who aren't normally getting engaged in certain aspects and bringing them to get engaged in different ways too. Sometimes we have to think about programming not as if what we've always done, but more so what's going to focus on helping our students be the best student that they can be. And in doing that, those relationships that our peer orientation mentors are building with the students, they come back and let me know, well, hey, Mr. Baker, our students are struggling in this area. They're struggling in this area. And so as I develop programming to push out, I'm able to think about, okay, well, let's bring in a counseling office. Let's bring in someone to talk about manhood for our guys. Let's bring in someone to talk about mental health. Let's bring in some academic support services so that we can make sure that our students are holistic based off of the needs that they want. We have the Male Achievement Center program that I was a product of at North Carolina Central University. And so when I came to Shaw University and I saw the need for male retention, I was like, well, why not? Let's develop this program and mirror what's already working at other institutions. And so bringing that here, having a safe space for men to come into a place and be who they are authentically, not just as what the generational mindset is to be a man, but being more inclusive of what that idea is and allowing people to come together in a sense of community. And so my approach here for inclusion is a lot of different branches to the tree because there are a lot of different students that we have to think about being able to be impactful to, excuse me, and making a change in their lives.
I want to ask a follow up question to both of you all on that. So, we talk a lot about kind of the up top programming aspects, right? But what are some of the nitty gritty things that make that successful? So, also as an NCCU graduate and a proud Eagle, um, I know that we have a closet on campus where students can get professional dress clothes, for example. But what are some specific aspects of some of these retention programs that create belonging and support that really make it pop? They're the thing that students always want to see. May it be the blazer, may it be the professional development fund, may it be the first time that they got on a bus and got out of town. But what are some of those tangibles, friends?
I'm trying to think. So I look at branding, and I look at branding as like a professional advocacy, right? Because a lot of people didn't really know about McNair program. Some people still think it's a scholarship. I'm like, no, it's this is what it is. This is the details of it. And so the piece of getting students outside of their comfort zone. So I'll tell them like, look, we're not on a bus, we're flying. And so a lot of times this might be their first time flying. And so trying to create those experiences, but also too, I feel like when you're in that HPC space, you get the autonomy to create that vision that you kind of want to see, and then listening to them of things what they want to do or things they haven't been able to do. And so being able to create those experiences for them, and then two tapping into those relationships and resources that we have. Like there's a lot of great Eagle alum, Central alum, and so one of the things we did, so we'll have like a homecoming mixer, right? And so that's what I'll try to invite students who have graduated to kind of come back. And then again, getting that to that creative piece, I'll call it like, Rock Nation brunch thing. Or I'll have the end of the year celebration. I'll do like the McNairs or something like that to where you're kind of creating that buy-in, but you're also creating a culture to where it's like, one of my students said, like, what's the dress attire? And I was like, it's like a Rock Nation. She's like, oh, so Black excellence, got it. And so it's just one of those things to where you're just having fun with it, but at the same time, you're really kind of uplifting them and just appreciating them. And that kind of creates that buy-in with the programming piece too.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo branding. Branding is, I love branding, and I know Dr. Johnson is the king of it too. But creating these experiences for our students, I think when we think about retention, sometimes the first thing that comes to mind is academics. But retention is so much more than just the academics. It's the support, it's the belonging, it's the feeling included in the different things, and so it's also feeling welcome or feeling proud to be about being where you are as an institution. And so one initiative last year we did was we had these free haircuts for our students, and we had people come do haircuts, retwists for the guys, and we had stylists to come do the ladies' hair. And for some of my students, it was very insightful to see their faces like bright, grow bright. Some of these students may not have had a haircut since they've been in school. And so, seeing these students come, be excited. And then we have an initiative through our Male Achievement Center called Dapper Thursdays, where we're promoting professional dress, but it's more than just putting on a nice outfit and looking nice. It's promoting, having a feel good sense of yourself. Because if you feel good, you're going to operate good. You're going to go to class. You're going to be at the front of your class. You're going to want to show off your outfit. But what people may not realize is they're going to class. They're excited to go to class so that they can be seen, but they're going to class. They're excited to go to class and be in the front of the room. And when you feel good, it makes you want to do more. And so I think initiatives like that. I know you mentioned the clothes closet. We're actually launching this month a suit drive for our students here on campus. And also in the process of opening up a closet on campus with clothes and things that are being donated by people who want to give to not only just our Male Achievement Centers, but to anybody who's in need on our campus. And I'm a really big advocate for our students. Listen, we have our Dapper Thursdays. I recognize everybody can't buy a suit. If you wear the same size as I do, I'm pretty sure I got a suit that you can have or borrow. Your brother in the program has a suit that you can have or borrow. And I think that sense of inclusion and community, I think the community building is the biggest thing. We do study hall hours, and I'm very intentional about my students doing study hall hours within the space that I'm in so that they can build a sense of community together. And what I'm seeing now is other students who may not even be in the program want to just come up, pop up their laptop. And now we're focusing on their academic support. We're creating a sense of belonging and community. And then they're also kind of finding that love for being a student here, which ultimately is what we want to see and which is ultimately what wants them to add to our retention in different ways.
Thank you both. As you were talking, I was really listening and thinking about this idea of like belonging plus one. Like, I feel like so much of what you're describing is giving students the strong foundation and the resources that they need to like feel good about themselves, like look in the mirror and see their like suit and their new hair, or like see themselves being welcomed with the banners and the branding. And so to really put that firm foundation under them, but then that like allows them to stretch, right? To like do a McNair research project that maybe they wouldn't have thought they could do before, or to like interview for a position that maybe they didn't believe that they could at first. So I wonder if you either of you have any stories or examples of how like giving that community of belonging and support can then let students like stretch into new spaces that they may not have thought that they could afterwards. And either person can jump in.
Uh,
I'm trying to think. I had so I'll have students who are being like right at our workshops, and I'll ask them to do little things like, "Hey, can you lead the icebreaker for us?" Or, "Hey, can you do this?" Just to kind of get them out their comfort zone a little bit. And so one thing in particular, this one student, I would kind of have her talk or introduce anytime we had like a workshop. But then we were fortunate enough we brought Jamel Hill here to campus, and I had her introduce Jamel Hill, and like the confidence that she had, and just that seeing that like, okay, wow, he thought I could really do this. The trust that I put in her, and she just took off from there. So now if we present anywhere, she's the first one. Like I go to like, hey, we think about presenting right here at this conference. She's been to Austin to present. She actually did this whole thing with a blood drive on her own on campus, and like she's like the number one person in North Carolina doing it. So that's the first example that came to my head, because at first she was kind of like, well, I'm just here to kind of observe. I don't really want to do too much, and so kind of challenge her a little bit, but seeing that she could do it, and just kind of giving her that space. And so yeah.
I definitely want to give a real world example that kind of happened in the last few weeks. And so, in addition to the many hats that we wear at our HBCUs, I also co-advise our Royal Court. And so, with that, we have had our pageant recently. And so, when we're going through experiences and things that we may see as traditional, I always try to tell my students that everything that you're doing in your preparation and your training and your development has intentionality. And so, I'm very big on making sure that we're not just doing these things just to do them because we're accustomed to doing them, that there should always be a learning outcome to everything, whether it's fun or not. And so we were in our pageant practice and they were just getting ready. We had students who were shy, who were coming into roles of student leadership. When you're a part of the Royal Court, you're an ambassador for the institution. And so in them preparing for their pageant, of course, there's like the question and answer, and there's the parts where they may speak. And I was telling the students that, we're not just practicing these questions for you to actually go through this pageant and be done with it. As an ambassador for the university, there are going to be times when the news is going to come on campus and they're going to interview you. You're going to have to be ready to answer questions on the spot. You're going to have to be ready with your elevator speech. You're going to have to be ready to project and represent yourself, your family, and the institution to the best of your ability at any moment's notice. And so as we're practicing for these things and going through pageant practice, the day before the pageant, the students had to engage in an actual interview. And so one of our students who was she was a little wavy in the interview practice, pageant practice. When it came time for her to actually do the real interview, she answered the questions. Actually, one of the questions that she ended up asking was something very similar that we had practiced. And so I pulled her to the side afterwards, and I was like, well, look at what that preparation did you in a real world situation. Before we even get to the actual pageant, you're already taking these skill sets and putting them to use. And I think in everything that we're doing, the events, the activities that we have on campus, at least for what I do in my area and in my office and who I support, I want to make sure that we're showing our students the intentionality to not just while you're in your student leadership positions or as a student matriculating through college, this is going to affect you in the real world in so many different ways that you may not even realize right now.
Awesome. I would love to ask a little bit about your motivations for being in the space and also what advice you have. So, we've talked a lot about particular student groups like students of color or places like an HBCU. But if you were a new professional and you had a group of students come to you and say, we don't feel like we belong, but we could feel like we belonged if we were able to create X space of community and support, how would you go about starting that community? And what advice would you give to the administrators and also the students? We'll start over with Dr. Johnson.
Trying to think. I think I would go with just identifying like a common purpose, common goal that the students kind of really wanted, and then just creating like that platform or space for engagement. And then again, with the administrator piece is it's always good to back that up with data. And so let's say, for example, Jalen starting the African American Male Initiative, going to those administrators, like, look, this is what the data is saying. This is how we can support our students of color. This is what we need to do. Can you all, match this resource, match this fund that we have for X amount of dollars? And then that's kind of you get the ball moving a little bit. So that's what I would say for just the advice I would give. And it could get a little deeper on the administrative side because then you have to create buy-in, you have to create a culture amongst just the administrators on campus. And I always actually, I was talking to a coworker of Jalen's maybe a couple weeks ago. Don't expect everyone to just jump on board, right? Especially out the gate. Be ready to have some like long nights just kind of working through, doing the legwork yourself. And then kind of, once it gets going, that's when the people will come back, administrators will come back, well, hey, let's partner on this, or hey, what do you think about doing this? And so that's kind of when you get to leverage those relationships that you've built. And so that would be the advice I would give for the student piece, of course, just to kind of create that platform, create the space, and then, let us be your voice for advocating for you.
Yeah, foundationally, I have to agree with empowering our students to come together and rally behind the sense of what it is that they want to accomplish, what it is that they feel is important for them to have a group or a sense of support, a sense of belonging, a sense of inclusion on their campus, and trying to help push them to mold that ideas. Because oftentimes our students don't truly know what it is that they want or how they want to see it. They just know that there's something that they want. And so helping them get to that level, providing them without overstepping and taking away their autonomy, and then them building out what it is they want to see, and then come in and give them, well, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? With using the example as the Male Achievement Center, once I saw what they were doing with male retention here, I was like, we have to do more. And then with my program, I modeled it, based off of what I saw at NCCU, what I've seen at Fayetteville State and other places. But I always thought about, I want to make sure that it's inclusive for everyone. Anyone who wants to join the program can, because the ultimate goal is making them feel like a holistic student, allowing them to have academic support, allowing them to have that sense of belonging, especially as a male on our campus. And I want to go to the next step. I want to create a foundation or a group of women on our campus as well. So I'm in the process of brainstorming and thinking, well, how can we find the funding? How can we find the support to make that happen? Because that's something that we need. And then the data. The data is so important with anything that we do in higher education, especially when we're asking for money. Data speaks far beyond more than you just coming to the table and saying, hey, the students want this, or hey, the students want that. Well, where's the data? Surveys, utilizing different ways to get information from our students, allowing them to tell the story of what it is they need, and then we do the work to make sure that we can supplement and support them. Everything I do, and I always tell people, I'm not here for my own well-being. I'm not here to get my own notches on my belt. I'm not here to shine. Everything that I do is for my students. And in order for me to be successful in what I do, my students have to be successful in feeling that they're accountable, that they're supported academically, that they feel like they belong here, and that they can always depend on me in all the things that I'm doing. And so that's what I think is most important when we think about creating those senses and allowing our students and even other colleagues who want to come to the table. And then the last thing I would echo that Dr. Johnson has said is be prepared for those late nights. When you want something to happen, especially if you don't have a true team or support system to do it or to see your vision up front, you got to make sure that you can do everything to tell the story for yourself so that when you're going to get your buy-in, you have the proof. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the results. And the results may not be what the standard that you set. I know personally, I set standards extremely high. So I never meet my expectation, but they're still high enough that we're meeting somebody else's expectation. And that's what we want to do when we're getting these results and this data.
Muted. Okay. Those are great examples. Thank you so much. Those of you all who are here with us today, logged in, please know that in a few minutes we're going to have a chance to welcome some of your questions. So be thinking about if there are any questions, comments, or just some flowers that you want to give to our presenters today who are sharing so much wisdom. But while people are thinking about their questions, I wonder what are some other suggestions that you might have for our audience? So if somebody out there is working on a college campus or is even a student on a campus, what could we, what are some ideas you have for them for how they could start to build more inclusive and supportive communities of belonging, in their spaces? And maybe even thinking about K through 12, like some of the younger students. So how can we, what are some suggestions for our audience to start building more supportive or inclusive communities right where they are?
I'll say first and foremost, do research to what other schools are doing. There's nothing that we're not doing that somebody else hasn't done. Always go check, see. There's a quote that I love. It says, "Great artists copy." No, it says, "Good artists copy and great artists steal." Literally, just go out there and grab it and go and make it your own. Recreate. There's no need to recreate the wheel when you have the foundation somewhere else. Reach out to colleagues or in the K through 12 system. Look forward, see what they're doing on the college campuses that you may want to bring to your high school or your middle school. But for us college colleagues and those who are collegiate students, look at what your peers are doing at other places and then listen to your peers. If you're an SGA president, if you're a Mr. or Miss, if you're the leader of an organization, or if you're in a program like the McNair Scholars or the Mel Achievement Center or AAMI, whatever it is, if you want to see your program grow, if you want to be more impactful, get to the level of where your peers are. Remember that you are a peer of your program. You just so happen to have a title to lead them, but you're no different than them. So talk to your peers, understand what it is that they need, what is it that they need to be supported in, and think about how you can utilize the positioning that you have to elevate them and yourself to another level to continue the program to grow. And then also remember too, a program is going to have to shift drastically every 4 years because the need of what one demographic of a college looks like in 4 years is going to be completely different. Your approach may have to be different, your leadership may be different, and the needs of the students are going to drastically change. As we think about right now, we're truly getting the bulk of those students who had to endure COVID in high school. So what does that mean? And for us who are practitioners, we're going to have to deal with that, the effects of what COVID looks like in the educational system for at least 10 more years from those who were in kindergarten up on into 12th grade. We're going to see those students continue to come into class, into college, and how it has affected them is going to be different vastly as they continue to matriculate through. So always be open-minded to change, always be open-minded to listening, and allow yourself to be foundational with everyone else as you're making your decision making.
Oh, now those are great examples. Trying to think to how could I piggyback on that? Man, he pretty much touched on everything, all the important points. I think from just the practitioner standpoint, you want to always look at what's coming after next and how can our campus just be prepared for that. I think for a program that's just starting out, right? When we just started the McNair program, again, like I said, no one knew about us. They thought it was a scholarship, but I started realizing the students that I did have in the program. I was like, okay, that guy, he's Mr. Senior. You know what? I'm gonna start highlighting him on our branding piece. Oh, that guy plays football. I'm gonna start highlighting him because now students are saying, "Oh, he plays football. Okay, what's this about now? Oh, that student. Oh, he's Mr. Senior. Oh, he's an alpha. Oh, da da da." And so then it starts getting the momentum going of like, well, let me find out more about this program, and then again highlighting the things that they're doing. So I'll say, okay, this person they got accepted into this school. This person got accepted here, and then being able to, let's say you're starting out partnering with other campus organizations. Let's say if you don't have a big influence, but you might know this program that does, again, using those relationships like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Do you all want to partner on us? And again, like we kind of said earlier, you might have to do the brunt of that legwork, but they're going to partner with you. And so that kind of builds your influence on campus. And so it's just kind of one of those things to kind of just be prepared for. And yeah.
Thank you both. I was, as we all actually hearkening back a minute to what we said earlier about data too, I was remembering that at UNCG, when I worked there, they did a survey about belonging for students on campus. And like the high level results, looked pretty good. Like students did feel some sense of belonging. But importantly, when you disaggregate the data and see and kind of look down to a deeper level to think about, does every group of students experience that same level of belonging? Or are there some students who do feel connected to the institution, to their peers, to the opportunities, and other groups of students that are feeling less belonging, less connection? So I think that's just a like good practice in general when you're aiming for inclusion and you're using data. Be sure that you're slicing and dicing that data every way you can to really get down to the nuances and understand the particulars of people's experiences.
So I want to add to that. In my new role, I'm on day 2 of my new venture as Associate Director of Inclusive Excellence. Something that I've just learned in the 2 days of this role um, is how do we map content back to our deliverables at a university, right? So how do we map that back not just to the institutional mission, but the departmental mission? How do we map that back to our board of governors, our board of eons, or even our state-based system? And by using that, sometimes when folks want to cancel programs or say that initiatives should or should not exist, it's often because we haven't mapped them or justified them or been proactive in reporting on data to make a difference. We all know that politics be politicking. But at the end of the day, if we can find justification for some of these programs, when shifts occur, we can rename them and reclaim them as a part of our institutional values. And so that's just something that I've learned on day 2.5. Um, one point is if you have any questions or comments, whether you're watching us with us live, we know we have a ton of viewers that are going to be watching this even in 2029, whether you're on YouTube or LinkedIn. We would love if you drop some comments in the chat. If Jalen or Drew said something that really enticed you, at them, connect with them, really get involved with them because they are doing phenomenal work, not just on HBCU and college campuses, but out in the community, in their fraternities, in these maker spaces that they lead. So I want to give a shout out to that, to leave them some love in the chat. The last question we'll get to before question and answer is, where do you see the future of inclusion specifically related to the work that you do? And how do we ensure that we have systems in place so that folks can feel included? And we'll go over to Jalen and then Dr. Johnson.
Awesome. So, as it pertains to the work that I do, as we've echoed the concept of data so many times, I think that's important and foundational because I want to create a program here in all of the things that I'm doing that can live past my time at Shaw University, especially when we think about the Mel Achievement Center and the things that I'm doing with our first year experience. My office also oversees our second year experience and our orientation programs as well. And thinking about all those different aspects, what are the things that I could do foundationally to keep the things rolling? My office is grant funded, so we are a Title III grant. So the future of our office also depends on how well we report back to that too, and making sure that we're upholding the mission and the values that were set forth with that grant, and making sure that we're doing our reporting out. So from a administrative place, the reporting and the data is important. From a more practical place and thinking about our students, making sure that we have instilled in our students who are a part of these programs to have the passion and the pride that we have for when developing these programs and leading these programs. I can't be the most passionate person about the Mel Achievement Center at Shaw University. My students have to lead that effort because they then, it's like a virus. They have that passion, it would then translate to the next student and to the next student and to the next student. And now we have a whole COVID system of people excited about being a part of a program like this that's going to continue to spread around campus. And so using that analogy, you think about it, you have to create that excitement in our students and what you're doing so that they can tell the story and they can be the gatekeepers to the future of our programs. Because if they are, they're going to continue to be engaged. They're going to continue to uphold the expectations for the program. And then that's going to give you you the data, the positive data that you need to show why it's intentional and why it should continue to be supported on your campuses.
Jalen, you are coming with the hot fire, and I want to give you a shout out. Dr. Stacy Sowell or Sowell said, "So proud of Mr. Baker and all he's doing with our Mac and Retention Center at Shaw University." So, shout out to you, good friends. And for
Thank
anyone
you.
here that's joining us live, please drop a question, please drop a comment in the chat. We've got some comments from Jay, who is an Alpha Lambda and also NCC alum. So, shout out to you, darling. We've got Julian, Dr. Julian, who said great conversation. And we've got Mr. Tim Johnson, who you both should know affectionately, who joined us today and said both of these gentlemen are NCCU legends and happy to have seen both of these amazing men continue to create space and examples of how to do this effortlessly. And I think Dr. G and I can also say the same. But we'll go over to you, Dr. Johnson, to hear some of your comments about what's the future and how do we continue to promote inclusion in spaces.
To kind of piggyback off what Jalen already said, just increasing those initiatives, those diversity initiatives, increasing our or inclusive curriculum development, and then honestly, really taking advantage of AI. And so, especially when it comes to that data piece, right? Being able to filter out and break down, unpack that data, being able to kind of narrate your story, it's because, like we said, things could really shift here, and so we have to really be able to tell or explain our value, what we're doing, our impact. And so, those are the things that I kind of look at, just from the administrative side of things, being able to expand our support services for students, because like we talked about, a lot of students are coming out like that COVID era to where mental health is another thing that's kind of taken off to be how can we prepare for that, and so being able to use those resources, expand upon those resources, build them out a little bit more, and then again, of course, technology. So AI, right? How are we doing that? How are we using that? There's a great company that I was trying to partner with to where okay, they can come in, they can break this down, the software. It makes our job easier. It doesn't it's not pushing us out the door. It just makes our job a little bit easier. It gives us an outline of what to go off of, and so that's something that I definitely see as far as being able to kind of build out that space going forward.
I appreciate you, Lee, for bringing up the current political atmosphere that we have, especially as somebody who has graduated from one of the UNC system schools and worked at one of the UNC system schools. I know that things are not easy right now in the UNC system. So I just also want to say stay encouraged that we know that our students matter. We know that their lives are important and that we cannot let these, to me, mean-spirited policies make them feel that they don't belong anymore or that they are not important and valued and contributing members of our communities. So I appreciate that Lee provided some thoughts already about how to strategize, how to respond, and how to stay committed to the course, because our students are still here and they still need us, and we still want them to hear the message of how very valuable they are.
We want to welcome some time. We know there's a little delay in the chat, but we would love if any of you all have any questions specifically when it's related to communities of belonging and support. So, whether it's how to create the system, whether it's a specific program that you would like feedback on, both of these individuals, I'm sure, would love to be paid as consultants for your efforts. But if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. And as we're getting to respond to those questions, I would love to take a minute just for pause. We know that in the education system, unfortunately, we've had some violence that has occurred, and often the violence that happens on a K through 12 campus impacts the work that we do in higher ed. And I just want to take a second for pause, everyone, to take a deep breath, because education is real. These systems are real. The power is real. But let's give space to that. Thank you so much. And we're sending well wishes and good energy and prayers to any and all those we're impacted. I know that often impacts our nonprofit folks and our K through 12 folks, and also our higher education folks to go to work every day and think about how we making students feel safe. And we know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs that if students don't physiologically and psychologically feel safe, none of that other stuff matters. It can go out the door. They don't care about classes. They don't care about anything. We just hope that some legislation can come. And as we work together with tools to manifest inclusion, we're hoping that inclusion can also be included with safety in mind. We didn't have any questions at the moment, but Dr. G, did you have any questions last minute that you would like to pose?
We actually do have a question from our good friend, Mr.
I
Rory
missed,
from
I
Durham.
missed that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so he was wondering, how do we effectively address conflicts and disagreements within a community while maintaining a sense of unity and respect? Which is such an important question, because even while we try to create this sense of community, we know that there are many, many like distinct individual and beautiful differences that we bring with us into a community. So we have that gorgeous diversity, and sometimes that comes up in opinion and disagreements. So let me see if our guests have any thoughts about that question.
I'll take a stab at it. Well, first and foremost, I think it's important for us to understand that when we're working in education in general, we're always not working for ourselves. Our personal beliefs and our opinions are limited sometimes because we have to think about what is seen as the best thing to do for our students. And when we're working in a university system, it's good for us to establish a sense of community with those who we agree with and with those that we don't agree with, so that we can work collaboratively to move forward. I think when we already set that notion that we're on the left side and the right side of the fence, we never come together to kind of work together to see how can we compromise in our disagreements about how we should move forward. And that's easier said than done, but I'm definitely someone who believes in moving with a sense of community and inclusion with everything that I do, working with people who you wouldn't normally work with, bridging the gap to those who may be hesitant to work with you, and then also just being open-minded to different types of people. We all come from different backgrounds, we're different religions, we're different identities, orientations, whatever the case may be. We're all vastly different, and so when we come to a sense of a educational playing field, it's an even playing field. We're all trying to strive to do the same thing and accomplish the same goal. So building that sense of community, reaching across the fence and just doing our best to work and help people understand why one side or the other side's notion may be the better notion. And that can only work when you've established those relationships to be healthy in a sense of working together.
Definitely. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with Jalen. Of course, I think establishing those guidelines with respect just from the beginning, right? We're all students here, we're all part of this community, and being able to kind of establish that work from there. But then hearing each other out and being able to come to like you said, somebody has to be wrong, right? In that kind of space. And then, okay, what's the compromise here? How do we still kind of move forward? But I think if we kind of start with a space of, well, we're hearing each other's perspective, experiences, identities, but we're being respectful and supportive in that way, that would be like the first kind of like step towards a meaningful resolution.
I wanted to add a resource that I'm aware of, which I think is called Democratic Dialogues. That's a small d. And I will follow up and find the link and be able to share that. But basically, it's a process for teaching people how to really listen carefully when you're trying to bridge across different points of view. And so not to listen, in order to defeat someone else's opinion, but to listen in an open way, to be able to understand the perspective that that person's sharing with you, and then maybe see if there is any common ground where you could start to build a solution. So again, I think I learned about this through the Campus Compact, North Carolina Campus Compact program, but I will dig a little further and try to find that link, and then we can share it with show notes. And we also have a question from Michaela, which is, as staff, how do you all maintain engagement within your own communities while being the people who create communities and belonging for students? So we know that student affairs work can be exhausting is part of what I read into that. So how do you maintain engagement with your own communities and like keep filling your cup back up?
I think for me, it's maybe partnering or collabing with other McNair programs at different universities. And so being able to see, so for example, we partnered with VCU over the summer for like a McNair boot camp. And then, but really seeing the good work that they do, and then kind of seeing that kind of come to light, like, okay, we made this vision, we came together, it came together, it was great. That kind of fills my cup back up. Like, no, we put together a great experience for the students, and so that's what kind of helps me, like, okay, you know what, this was worth it. Or being able to see the students kind of have takeaways, like, oh man, I really enjoyed this about this personal statement. I really feel really confident now going into applying for graduate school. That's what kind of makes me like, you know what, I was about to cancel this whole thing, but it all makes sense. Then that's what kind of helps me kind of like get through and build that community within my own department.
I definitely want to echo that relationship building in those communities of people who are doing the same thing. So I definitely am in touch with Mr. Jalen Spooner, who's the director of the AAMI at NCCU, and Dr. Roger Heath, who used to be the director, who is also now working at Fayetteville State University. We talk all the time, and I'm always, asking for things. I'm always supporting them in what they're doing. Our students have connected at a conference that was held at NCCU last year, which was dynamic because it motivated my students to want to continue the work they're doing in the Mel Achievement Center. And then also thinking about having that healthy balance too, making sure that the work that I'm doing is something that I'm still passionate about too. Because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to want to be able to sow into it. So making sure that as I'm teaching my students to take care of their mental health, I have to take care of my mental health, and that was a bit of a big challenge for me just a couple of years ago. And so having to come full circle and to be someone who's a mental health advocate now, definitely being able to help teach my students, because that's one of the largest issues that I'm seeing on my particular campus. And I'm sure a lot of other people can attest to that our students are struggling with their mental health. They're struggling with adapting to the college experience. They're struggling with adapting with relationship building on campuses. They're struggling with adapting to just being away from home in some senses, or even the sense of social anxiety. Again, we're dealing with those who were at home for a couple of years almost. So there are a lot of different things that are affecting their mental health. And so making sure that as I'm supporting my students in their mental health, I'm also in balance with mine too is super crucial, because you can get drained in this work that we do. Being someone who works in student affairs, enrollment management, higher education in general, it's draining. I have not seen a 9 to 5 day in a long time. I don't know what that is. My parents ask me, when do you take lunch? When I can squeeze it in. And that's horrible. Sometimes I'm working and eating at the same time. And so I'm trying to be more intentional about creating a more healthy balance for myself so that I can continue to do that for my students as well.
Thank you, y'all. Hey, just a shout out, this weekend is the North Carolina Folk Music Festival here in Greensboro. That's a great way to build up your energy again by just like being out amongst like community writ large and hearing some good music and eating some good food. So I'm going to do that.
Absolutely. So we're coming close on time. We ask that if you have any additional questions or comments, that you go ahead and drop them in the comment section. We've definitely loved having Dr. Drew Johnson and Jalen Baker today. It just warms my heart so much to meet people from years and years ago. Drew, I think the first time I actually met you was like in 2000 and maybe 7 or 8 when you played ball. This was even before. This is way back in the day, buddy.
Man, let's keep the stories to a minimum.
Yeah. And then Jalen, I think I met you back in 2000 and maybe 11 or 10 at NCCU. And so it's just wonderful to be full circle. And a lot of our folks in our audience are also Eagle alums too. So Eagle love in the house. So, Jalen and Drew, we spent some time with you today. Well, before we get to where to find you, we also invite you all to come join us next week. We've got another great guest of panelists. So, we've got Darren Jenkins here and Natasha Young. So, if we have any folks that are joining us from the UNC system and or who have been a part of the UNCG community, we definitely welcome you. They're going to be talking about strategies for leadership and development outside of the classroom. And then the following week, we have two more UNCG wonderful folks who are Nakia and Demarcus, who are going to be talking about authentic relationships among staff, students, and faculty. So please join us back here. If you're not following us over on Manifesting Inclusion on LinkedIn, please feel free to do so. We would love to have you as a part of our community. But Dr. Drew Johnson, where can folks find you and how can they connect?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn, and then we have two Instagram pages. My personal one is DJ921, and then we have one for our McNair page. I encourage everyone to go to that page. I post on there daily about our students and stuff they do, and that's just NCCU McNair Scholars. And so yeah, I love that branding piece too. So yeah, you'll definitely find me there.
Gotcha. And we'll move over to Jalen. Where can folks find you and how can they connect?
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Jalen Baker MPA. I have personal pitch. I'm also a graphic designer. So if you need graphic design, I can consult with educational programming, higher educational program. I'm a speaker. So all of those things, if you see there's something that I can relate to your students about, definitely bring me in. I would love to be there. You can follow my office pages on Instagram at ShawU_OSS. That's the Office of Student Success. Or to find out more about the Mel Achievement Center, that'll be ShawU_MAC or Mac. And then you can also follow me on my personal Instagram page at President's Jalen. That's Jalen. I'm very active and I'm a social media junkie. I love to connect with people because I love branding and I love all kinds of engagement. And so I'm an open book. So please feel free to connect with me.
It has been a pleasure having both of you all. Dr. G, I want to give you a chance. Would you like to give any last notes or shout outs before we close out our show today?
No, just an appreciation for the space of belonging that you all have created here today, not only amongst the four of us, but amongst all of the folks who have joined us out in the universe, wherever you are. So thanks to everyone who has come together in community today to help us think about how to generate more sense of belonging. I appreciate everyone.
Also, it's been nothing but love for you too. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we can't wait to see you all on our next stream next week. So thank you so much for joining us. And bye now.
Thanks for having us. It was great.